So as most of us now realize, live streaming isn't going anywhere. Whether you're a church or another kind of small or medium-sized venue, people are now used to receiving, worship or concerts or whatever over live stream. Over the last couple of years, many of us have invested in technology to kind of get us going, and now a lot of people are asking, what's the next step? A common upgrade from going from just some still cameras is to move to what is known as a PTZ camera, which is pan tilt zoom camera. And what they are they're basically robotically controlled cameras that you can control from somewhere other than right where the camera is, and control where they pan, where they tilt, and how far they zoom in and out. Now, for a long time, the kind of leader in consumer grade, kind of small business grade PTZ cameras has been PTZ Optics. They make a great, wonderful camera for a fairly reasonable amount of money. You can see when I've got one pulled up here on Amazon. This is their 30x zoom, 60-degree PTZ camera, and it retails for $1,800. Now, that wasn't a bad price, and it really isn't a bad price, but you can, as it happens, do better. I was recently going through Amazon trying to find something to use that maybe wasn't as much money that we could experiment and play with. And when I did that, I came across these SMTAV, sure, we'll go with that, cameras. And as I was looking at them, I'm like, man, these look suspiciously familiar. And in fact, these cameras look a lot like that camera. And as I looked at their specs and really investigated all the different pictures and even downloaded the manuals for them, I found out not only were they similar, they were basically identical. The only difference being this, their 30X version, is $850, not $1,800. So we took a bit of a flyer. We ordered two just to see how they were. I can tell you confidently now, based on the packaging, the remote control, the manual, and the performance of these cameras, is that these are PTZ Optics cameras, just with the PTZ Optics name removed and another name put on. Now, this may sound weird, but the truth is most of the electronics that we encounter today are manufactured in some nameless factory, usually in China, as these were. It's easy to imagine that that factory, after completing a run of PTZ Optics cameras, made a few more and elected to sell those under either their own branding or, through a third party. Frankly, this kind of stuff happens all the time. So it's no surprise. Now, this is a pretty significant discount, which is nice. So I did wonder, are they skimping on the materials? Do these things not as perform as well? Well, we've had them up and running for all of one Sunday so far, but we've done a lot of testing on them, and I can tell you that these things perform amazingly. They have a great Panasonic-derived CCD chip in them that actually works remarkably well in low light, which is a good thing for us. We don't have the best lighting in our sanctuary, so we need something that does well with low light. And I would say the quality that we were getting out of these camera isn't really distinguishable from the quality we were getting out of our XC10 and XA10 Canon cameras before that, with the added bonus that these are both cheaper than both of those cameras were, and they're remote controlled. They're PTZ. How cool is that? It's pretty cool. Now, what you're looking at here on the back is a lot of great features that you're going to want if you're looking for a PTZ camera. First of all, you have an Ethernet in. That's how you're going to control it. You're going to control it over your network. Not all PTZ cameras are controllable over your kind of standard Ethernet network. So you do want to look for that. You want to look for one that has control over IP. This does. So this is going to plug right into your wireless or right into your wired network, just like anything else was. Another kind of party feature on this one is that it actually can take power over that Ethernet port as well, over power over Ethernet. This is not a well-documented feature. It's not really documented well at all with the instructions that come with this camera. You can find some documentation on the original PTZ Optics link. But it is there and it does work. I have tried it. What we ended up going with is we got a TP-Link gigabit PoE plus. I'm honestly not sure whether this can work over just normal PoE or whether it needs the added power that comes with PoE plus. This automatically switches between the two. It knows what the device at the other end needs, so there's no harm in just going ahead and getting the plus version for what you need. So how this basically works is you plug your network connection into one port, and then you plug an Ethernet cable out of the other port that plugs into the back of the camera. That one cable carries the data to and from the camera and also carries power to the camera, making things like installation a lot easier. Now, for us, we wanted to plug this into our existing live stream system, and our existing live stream system accepts HDMI input. So conveniently, we have an HDMI out right there. And there's actually this is one little interesting feature. There's a little green scroll right in here that you need to use a tool to turn to tell it which resolution to send out over the HDMI. Now, the standard is what you're probably going to want, which is 1080p at 60 hertz. It's the thing most everything can use, so you're probably not going to have to touch it, but do hold on to your instruction manual because it tells you what the different options are. Now, if you have more advanced live streaming equipment that takes an SDI input, you also have an SDI output, which is nice. SDI takes your video signal and sends it over a coax cable, which is sometimes a lot easier to get into places. It's got a little bit longer distance to it and is the connection type that a lot of professional audio-video equipment uses. The nice thing about this is that means our cameras are kind of future-proof. If we move beyond our current live stream equipment, which currently works over HDMI, and move to something more professional, we've got an SDI right there. Now, you also have some additional ports in here that are for more traditional ways of doing things like security cameras and conference room cameras and stuff like that. You're probably never going to use that. The ports that you care about on the back of this thing are the Ethernet port, the power jack if you're not using PoE, and then either the SDI or the HDMI out. And it is, quite frankly, that simple to get it plugged in and get it running. Now, these are not consumer-grade products. You're not going to download an app onto your phone that helps you set them up. They are a little bit of a pain to get configured, and that's one of the things you'll read about in the Amazon reviews. The information that you need to get them set up are actually right here on the bottom. And so on the bottom, it's going to tell you the default IP address that the network connection has, and then the default username and password for logging into it. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to connect this camera probably straight from this Ethernet port to the Ethernet port on your computer, skipping your network completely, because this is set up to use a particular IP address that probably isn't the IP address you're using on your local network. And that's fine, because once you've got logged into it and gone through the little website setup, webpage setup inside the camera, you can change it to whatever you want to. So we've gone through and we've changed the IP addresses on these cameras to match IP addresses on our actual network. Now, you're going to want to give them static IP addresses, which means you're going to want to assign them an internet address that is just theirs. So in our case, it's 192.168.42.42 and 43. And that's going to be important later when we talk about the controller. But overall, I'm incredibly impressed with the performance about these. Now, we actually have two different models here. We have one that is the 12x zoom and one that is the 30x zoom. Now, one of the problems that right now on the Amazon listing is the one that is actually the 12x zoom is listed as actually a 20x zoom. It is not. It is actually, it's listed both as saying it has a 20x zoom and a 72-degree field of view, which means how wide it is. The 30x zoom is listed as a 30x zoom with a 60-degree field of view, which makes sense. This is one you're going to put further away and probably zoom further in. So this is the one that is in the back of our sanctuary. This one we want is up closer, so you're not going to zoom as far, and you want a little bit wider shot. Now, PTZ Optics doesn't make a 12x or a 20x with the wide field of view. They make a 12x with the wide field of view, which is clearly what this thing is. So just know that what it lists on Amazon for these cameras as the field of view is correct. What it lists as the zoom rate Not so much. The 20X, they offer another 20, Smurf offers another 20X that is listed as that narrow field of view, and that's what you want. This is a very compelling setup with these two cameras. The 12X one was about $700. The 30X one was $850. This one sits in the front of the sanctuary, slightly off to one side. This one sits in the way back of the sanctuary, slightly off to the other side. So we can get a wide shot of the whole sanctuary. We can get closer up shots of, you know, just you know, something close up, and it gives us some variety to play with. Now, once you've got these cameras set up, you're going to want to control them. They come with remote controls that you can use to do kind of basic functions with them to, you know, control them as far as the tilting and the panning and the zooming and all that kind of stuff. That would be good if you were just going to set them up and point them in a given direction and probably leave them there. Maybe that'd be a way to go. But as far as like something you would want to use, you know, during the context of a concert or a worship service, you're not going to want to do that. That's not going to work. You're going to want something a little more advanced. Now, here's where we went through a couple of iterations. You will find several control boards like this one for sale on Amazon. And they also vary in price. You can spend up to many thousands of dollars on it if you want to. We initially bought one for about $180 and it didn't have quite the features that this one had and simply just really wasn't workable. It just didn't work. So thankfully Amazon has a generous return policy, which we took advantage of. And instead we purchased this one, which is a keyboard. It's another basically no brand name thing. I'll put a link in the description to it, but it's again the kind of a no name brand thing, but it actually has some pretty nice features. Now on the back, you're going to find a power port. You're going to find an Ethernet port, and then you're going to find some of these older style connectors that you may use for more traditional systems. You're not going to use those. This also supports power over Ethernet, so that's actually what we've done. So we've run, the cable we run to this is just an Ethernet cable, and it takes its power and its network over that. Otherwise, you can plug in it does come with a power adapter you can connect to it. Now, what's great about this is you set this up in a similar way, right, where you connect it straight to your computer, you connect to the LAN settings that it gives you. When it first boots up, it'll tell you what its IP address is, so you connect to it that way, you log into its little website, and then configure it to be on your network however you need it on your network to be. Once you've done that, there's basically a search function. There's basically a button you push called search, and then it will search your network and find any other cameras on your network that it can talk to, and then it will list them for you. And then you can go through and then it'll list them on the screen, and then you can go add. So I'm going to add this camera, say whether it's camera 1 or camera 2. Whichever way you want it to be. Once you've done that, and set it up, it's really, really straightforward. There's a lot of features and buttons on here. A lot of them you're not going to use because you can use this as a security camera. You can control security cameras. You can use it to control conference room cameras. You can use it to for all sorts of things that, frankly, you're never going to do. The most basic function you want to be able to do is select the camera you want. So you hit cam, the number, enter. And then it'll go to the camera you want. And then it gives you on this screen a preview of what that camera is seeing. Now, it's important to know, the preview that shows up here is pretty low res. And it's gonna be, the colors aren't gonna be great or anything like that. And that's fine, because it's not for that. All it's for is for framing the shot. And then you can use the controller here to move it left, move it right, move it up, move it down, or twist it to zoom in and zoom out. Once you've got something set the way that you want it to be set, you know, and you've got a shot that you like and you want to keep that shot, well, that gets really easy because it has a series of presets, up to 100 of them, in fact. And setting one is pretty easy. So once you have the camera set the way you want, you go set preset, give it a number, enter. And then later, if you want to use that preset, you go call preset, the number of the preset, enter. So what we've done is we've set preset 1 through 5 on both of these cameras, and you know, preset 1 is a spot on up on the front of our sanctuary, you know, that focuses on the 2 chairs that I tend to sit on, and then there's a preset for where I tend to preach from, and then there's a preset for where our musicians tend to play. And so when it becomes time, when that's the next thing in the order of the list or whatever, we can go ahead and the operator can go ahead and just pull up those presets, and the camera is going to go automatically there. Now, the process of moving between the presets is not something you're going to want to watch from home, right? So the nice thing about having two cameras is you can have one camera streaming, and then you can set the other camera to the next preset for what you're going to do, and then use your video switching solution, whatever that happens to be. Maybe it's an ATM Mini Pro, maybe it's a Sling Studio, whatever, to switch between them. But you're not, the process of moving it does happen relatively quickly, which is nice, but it can be a little jarring to watch. So it's not anything anybody at home is going to watch. You can also just, if you want to, you can just control the whole thing manually. The nice thing is you can actually control the speed of basically how fast it zooms and how fast it pans and tilts based on this thing. So you can turn that really down low, and then no matter how far you move this, it's only going to pan so quickly. And the nice thing about that is if you want a nice tracking shot where you're tracking what's going on, you can have it. If you want to have a nice slow zoom in at a certain point during the service for what you're going on, you can have it. You can do whatever you want. Or if you just want to get there quickly, you can turn them up and move them where you need to go. So this whole setup here, this camera about $850. This camera, $700. This was $200 for this. So you can basically see where for less than $2,000, almost less than the cost of just one of these, if you bought it as a PTZ optics camera, we got all of this, and this is frankly all you need to have a two-camera PTZ complete setup in your church or small venue, assuming you have something for either the HDMI or the SDI signal to connect to. Now, another party trick with this is if, say, you only want to buy this and you don't want to buy any other equipment, there is another option. These cameras are capable of generating their own RTMP source, meaning they're able to stream their video that they're taking over your network at reasonably good quality. So you're talking 1080p and 4 megabits, which isn't great, but isn't bad. It's actually pretty good. You're going to get more performance out of either the SDI or the HDMI connection, up to probably 8 or 10 megabits, but you can do that. And software packages like OBS Studio can take RTMP sources as video sources. So you can have a software product like OBS that's installed on a computer that's on your network that is taking the RTMP feed from these two cameras that's just going over your network, and use that software product to switch your video, and do all those sorts of things, and then create the final stream that will get sent out to either YouTube directly or Facebook directly or to a service like Restream. So if you really just want to do it with just this hardware and a laptop and some free software through OBS, you can do that. It's obviously less expensive. OBS is also very powerful, but notoriously not the easiest thing to use, so it will take a little more time to get it set up. But if you already are an OBS shop and you're already doing it, that may be something to look at before you go buying some dedicated HDMI, encoder hardware or anything like that, and see if that quality is something that you like. One of the ways you can maximize that quality is making sure that the cameras are, connected as close, connected to your local network as close as you can get. We actually, because of where we wanted to put these cameras, we actually bought some HDMI or some Wi-Fi adapters that will basically take will allow you to connect something that has just standard Ethernet jacks to your Wi-Fi. That works fine for the low quality stream that it does on the preview app. That does fine for the controlling software. I'm not sure I would do that for broadcast. I think you'd want to stick with the hardwired Ethernet connection between the cameras. But also remember, that's the only cable you have to run to these cameras if you're going to do it that way, because you can run your power over it as well. All right, so why don't we head over to, I'm going to rehook all this back up in the sanctuary and give you a little taste for how it works in there. All right, so as you can see, we have our cam installed right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove the lens cap off of it and turn it on. Did I mention it does a little dance when you turn it on? It does. It's kind of neat. All right, so as that gets set, I'll come back around here. We'll see how we have it hooked up. I'm not using the power over Ethernet. I'm just using a standard plug-in. There's my HDMI, and then there's my Ethernet that goes down into our network connection down here. That HDMI actually comes down to our Sling Studio box, which is what we use to actually do our video controlling. Now, as you can see, we're a good bit from the front of the sanctuary. So it's got to do a pretty decent throw. It's probably about 30, 40 feet right there. And if you can see way down there is our other camera that's set up front. So that's the 12x with the wider zoom, or with a wider field of view. This guy right here is the 30x with the slightly narrower field of view. Now let's come over here to our little controller. So here we got our controller box. And as you can see, it is set up to, it is receiving that front camera signal. That's our camera 1. And you can see down there, it gives you the ID. I don't know if you can quite see that. There's the ID camera 1, the IP address of that camera. If I want to switch to the other camera, I just go cam 2. Camera 2 sitting right there. Enter. Boom, there's the other camera. And if I want to zoom up, I can. If I want to zoom down, I can. If I want to zoom in, so let's see how far we can go. Zoom up a little bit more. Keep zooming, keep zooming, keep zooming, keep zooming. As you can see, oop, we're going all over the place here. You can get pretty far in. With that zoom. So if we had a special musician up there in the special musicians corner, you'd be able to get pretty darn close on them, even from all the way back here, which is great. Now, if we are moving around, let's say we go call preset 1, enter. Boom, see how fast that was. Call preset 2, enter. Okay, there's our special music preset. Call preset 3, enter. A little closer in, call preset 4, enter. That goes over where we sometimes have our musicians, where we have our pianist. Call preset 5, enter. A little wider shot right there. So then we go cam 1, enter. We can do the same thing. We got that preset. Call preset 2. That does a little spot where I preach from, call preset 3, and on down the line. Works pretty slick. And of course, you can always manually adjust however you want to do it. Yeah, so I think that's it. All right, so just in kind of some closing thoughts, I am really impressed by these cameras. They seem to be every bit as good as the name brand PTZ Optics versions they are based on. They are giving us great quality, seem to be very well built. And despite a little bit of challenge initially getting configured, I mean, they are a more professional grade thing. They're not going to be as easy to configure as you might expect like a consumer electronic to be. But once you get over those hurdles, they actually work really, really well. And I found that the instruction manuals that are included do a really good job of walking you through that whole process. So I would actually give the SMTAV a pretty strong buy recommendation for anybody who's looking to get into the PTZ world for either their church or similar small venue. I hope you appreciated this. I really enjoyed sharing this with you. Thanks for sticking with it.